President Bola Tinubu has directed immediate investigation to ascertain the allegation that the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, made payment of 585 million naira into a private account against Nigeria's financial laws. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in a statement on Sunday, said the president is determined to get to the root of the matter and unravel the truth. According to Idris, the president promised that appropriate action will be taken to ensure that any breaches and infractions are identified and decisively punished, in line with the administration's commitment to public accountability and due process. The statement advised citizens to exercise patience on the matter while the investigation lasts, assuring that the findings will be communicated duly and transparently to the public. As the alleged financial scandal in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs continues to make headlines in the country, a fresh memo has surfaced revealing how the ministry approved funds for flight tickets and airport taxes for the minister's team from Abuja to Kogi State, even when there is no airport in the state. The breakdown of the disbursement of the funds show that 60 million naira was approved on November 6, 2023 for disbursement through the Director of Finance account, National Social Investment Agency, just 5 days before the November governorship election in Kogi State. The minister's advance team received 2,515,000 for DTA for 5 nights, local running at 30% of DTA for flight tickets and airport taxis. Each of the minister's advance team members received 200,000 naira for flight ticket and 20,000 naira for an airport taxi, amounting to 1.54 million naira. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, has revealed that plans to tarnish her image will amount to nothing. The minister's comment came after a document recently emerged showing that she allegedly disbursed 585,198,500 naira into a personal account. Despite the public outcry, Edu denied any wrongdoing in a post on X. The post reads, and I quote, "Integrity and accountability are our watchword. Under my watch in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, no one will embezzle government funds as before. The plans to tarnish the image of this administration, my person, or the ministry will amount to nothing," end of quote, she stated. All right, Rufai,
First,
let's talk about
this is a big blight on President Tinubu's administration. President Tinubu that came in, that he wanted to fight corruption. The humanitarian ministry has been dogged by many corruption allegations. Don't forget the former minister of this ministry is supposed to see the EFCC. She said she was unwell. We're still talking about that last week. Somebody also in the parastatal in the ministry in NCIPA was also suspended. Now we're having the case of Betta Edu. We cannot pass judgments because the federal government, through a message, through the Minister of Information, has come out to say that they want to handle this, so they're going to investigate. But we want to see the end of the investigation. And President Tinubu needs to save his face and save his government by ensuring that the Minister of Finance, Wale Edu, does that speedily, so we can get a response to all of these things. And if anybody is found wanting, the true course of the law shall take effect. But based on the allegations on ground, Federal Government Financial Regulations, Chapter 7, page 713 states, personal money shall, underline shall, in no circumstance be paid into a government bank account, nor shall any public money be paid into private bank accounts. An officer who pays public money into a private account is deemed to have done so with intention. Public, and there's a writer on the side that says public and personal money to be kept separate. While this matter broke, yes, we have heard from Betta Edu, integrity is a watchword. In some case, corruption is fighting back. But the Accountant General, Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, threw under the bus by saying we told her. that we're not going to honor such payments. So when the Office of the Accountant General threw under the bus, it speaks volumes. And that's why I say this is a blight on President Tinubu's administration. This will dog President Tinubu's administration. It will be a focal point in President Tinubu's administration. If President Tinubu really wants to redeem this administration image, he must have a complete probe. Because this is the only one that the document leaked. How about the other one she signed for? Just like another one that leaked over the weekend about traveling to Kogi with an airplane where there's no airport there. Or maybe there's an airport there, we don't know. Maybe there's an airstrip there, we don't know. So that has also come out. How about the other ones? And more documents are going to come out. What about the ones that are happening that we don't get to see? Probably this one, somebody leaked it because they had interest in it and they wanted to make it public. So there must be an holistic review. We can't be complaining that Nigeria does not have money and we hear money is being filtered away and paid into people's accounts. Anyway, it's just subject to the investigation that the government will do and they will give us a report on it. But my problem with governments, but I will give President Tinubu's administration a benefit of doubt, is that hitherto we have reviews and investigation. They write white paper and they throw it under the carpet. Just like I'm asking government, the white paper on the NDDC that ought to have been issued, where is it? Are the recommendations followed? I've been asking that question for 2 days now. Nobody's answering me. So we'd like to see the end of this. Also, I'd like to enjoin all of us. Let us wait till the investigation before we say a lot. Better, I said, yes, but I have pointed according to the law that you cannot pay public money into private accounts. It is not done. So we even like in this audit to know all of these transactions. Okay, so somebody is telling me here that please, Kogi has an airport at Adago near Ajaokuta. Also, Obajana Cement has for Dangote. Maybe they landed there. Okay. It's a caveat. You know, we need to get more rounded facts. So maybe that was where they landed. But all that documents needs to be thoroughly probed. And we need to see the end of this matter. And justice has to be done. If after all the investigation, Betta is exonerated, Betta is exonerated. If after the investigation she's not. But I don't believe in us slandering people in the court of public opinion. Since the government has said they're going to investigate, yes. But the optics tarnishes the image of this government. And more has to be done.
All right. So, wow. You know, it was a very interesting weekend, Rufai. Beyond the weekend, I think it's instructive that this same ministry, even though under a slightly different name in the last administration, was in the news last week for similar or issues around investigation into corruption activities under that ministry. We've said it a number of times. In fact, when we had Dr. Betta Edu on the show in the early days of her appointment, we had asked if she was going to probe the activities of the previous administration and her predecessor, because that's the first time we had the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs. And what she had said was that, you know, she didn't really speak to that, just about the fact that she was hoping to move forward and execute projects, and that under her own tenure, the ministry would be as transparent as possible. We posed questions around the conditional cash transfers, allegations around, suspicions around the National Social Register, and a few other things, which she said and assured Nigerians right here on the show that under her own tenure, she would be a lot more transparent and things would be done properly. In the last few months, by the way, her inauguration as minister was on the 21st of August. So she's been in that role for about 4 months, January 21st to make it 5 months. Under that time, we have heard of disbursement of funds. even though there was scrutiny around that, because the process still seemed quite transparent, despite the fact that this administration said they'll do better and do differently. Now let's go back to the case on ground. A memo was leaked from her ministry requesting for the sum of 585 million naira to execute some projects to be paid into the private account of one Onielu Bridget. Now, Rufai has already outlined the stance in terms of legally whether or not an MDA, that's a ministry, department, or agency, can transfer money, especially that bulk amount, into a private account. On the surface of it, it looks very, very suspicious. You would wonder why one individual was collecting money. Now, in her defense, her justification for this is that Onielu Bridget is the project accountant for the Grants for Vulnerable Groups, aka GVG, from the Department of Finance, and that it is legal, according to her media aid, in civil service for a staffer, the project accountant, to be paid and use the same funds legally and retire the same with all receipts. I can understand when you're talking about petty cash, for instance, and your petty cash is paid and then you provide receipts afterwards. But it's very interesting. I would be very concerned to know that the government pays out sums of 585 million naira to a personal account and you remit receipts. I think that's very curious and suspicious. Now, this is where the investigation, as announced by the presidency or the president through his Minister for Information, has said that there'd be a robust and thorough investigation, because according to them, this government is built on the foundations of, transparency, integrity, and so they were going to investigate. Recall that there has been a spotlight on the ministers appointed by the president. He himself said during the New Year's speech that he was going to ensure that we're going to have quarterly reviews, and that's why he appointed a special advisor on policy coordination to ensure that ministers were able to deliver on their remit. And of course, if there were any infractions, it wasn't going to be the way it was in the past, and so there will be punitive measures served on any minister that was found erring. I'm hoping that this covers a ministry or a minister after investigation is found guilty of acts of corruption. Again, I must highlight and emphasize here that even though we have the memo out there, there's a magnifying glass on the details, until a full investigation has been instituted, is completed, and the report released, we cannot jump into yet. We can judge the case on the surface of it, but until the investigation is concluded, we must wait for a thorough investigation. And this is where we're calling the presidency and the president to act. It's the first time during this administration such infraction is said or is alleged to have happened. If in the case there's a thorough investigation, number one, who is Onielu Bridget? Why was she paid the money? Did the money get to her? Even though the Accountant General, Dr. Oluwatoyin Maiden, has said that, yes, she did receive the memo, but because it was against the processes of her ministry, of her agency, she refused to honor that memo. Was the money paid out? Was it just a request that was made that wasn't honored? That's one. Number two, let me play devil's or better's advocates this morning. Let's assume that she's just come into office, and so she didn't understand the processes and procedures of how ministries are meant to ask, request funds, what should be done and not done. However, if this happened before the ministerial retreat, we'd say, okay, she was unaware, let's cut her some slack, she's just coming to the office, and maybe she made a mistake. But they've gone through a ministerial retreat. Her department must have gone through training. I want to assume that there were trainings, and Dr. Batia talked about, Rufai, in detail what some of the things that happen at those ministerial retreats. How to write memos, how to request for funds, the do's and don'ts of that ministry, and the likes. So that's unfortunately against her, the fact that she must have been trained as to what is procedure, what is the right process, and perhaps she didn't adhere to it. That's an infraction on its own. Number two is the fact that she mentioned that, okay, let's assume that she wasn't aware of the details of the money that was being given. Maybe she just signed off. That in itself is an indictment, because the fact that you're not thorough as the head of a ministry to look at every line item to ensure that you plug holes, opportunities for corruption, is in itself a big indictment on that office. And so as many ways as you try to look at it to maybe, okay, let's make room for her here, room for that. It's very difficult. It's a very tight corner. However, I do believe that the thorough investigation by the president will reveal. And I think this is also important because it's not just for the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. It's for other ministries to take note. The reason why people like the PD or groups like the PDP, SERAP, spokespeople and civil rights organizations have come out very strong, including lawyer Femi Falana, to demand a probe and to ask that if indeed she's found guilty, she is made to face the It's because we must end this cycle and culture of corruption in MDAs. In only 4 months, we are looking at over £500 million in a nation where the people are suffering, and we are talking about the fact that people cannot eat 3 square meals. The same ministry that is supposed to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable Nigerians is where we're seeing this kind of action. If in the end we find out that this issues occurred, then there must be very heavy penalty and punitive measures. In fact, some people have suggested that perhaps the minister steps aside whilst the investigation is being conducted, just on the strength of the fact that she approved a memo or instituted a memo that went out for that sum of amounts to go into a private account. That in itself calls for a suspension. That in itself. So there are many things to discuss, and I do believe that there will be many things that will be unveiled. May we get to the bottom of this matter. May all those who are culpable be brought to book, and we don't just want audio announcements of investigations. Also, transparency. We must get the Nigerian people to know the end of what the matter is, what the investigation is about, the reports following the investigation, and what the president will do in the event that she or anyone is culpable or found guilty of any kind of infraction or corrupt activities. These are questions that we must respond to, and I think that Nigerians are waiting. This is the first from this administration, and the action would tell Nigerians just how transparent and anti-corruption move this administration is. It would send a very strong signal, not just to Nigerians, but also to the international community. I think that is very important. Move on to our next story.